I'm Tim Colbatch from the Age newspaper. Using your vote indicator, your Senate calculator, using the figures from that, seems to make an argument here that looking at the way the preference flows are going now, it's quite possible that Pauline Hanson could knock off Arthur Sinodinos. Is that how you see it?
If she gets above 2%, that's a possibility, but she's got to get above 2%. Pauline Hanson is an appalling draw on the ballot paper. She's got the column right on the right-hand side. And there is the farce at this election that you need a ballot paper you need a magnifying glass to actually read the names of the candidates. So I think there'll be a lot of voters who'll really struggle to find her at the right-hand side of the ballot paper, which makes it tough for her to get 2%. If she can't get 2%, she can't get elected. But it is certainly the case. Look, up until now, I thought the coalition would get rough control of the Senate. They would get to 36 seats with the assistance of a couple of crossbench MPs. They would have a negotiation path to pass legislation. Now that we've seen the preference tickets and we're aware of how many ridiculous numbers of candidates are standing and people are going to have to use magnifying glasses, there is the case the coalition could lose seats to minor parties. If the coalition falls short of a third quota in either Victoria or Tasmania, there's the outside chance that Family First could knock off one of their seats. The same could occur in South Australia. And in New South Wales, it could be the Shooters Party, it could be Pauline Hanson. It's all because of the size of the number of candidates, political, I can't think of the word, but the political parties, the minor and micro parties have just swapped preferences like a giant game of Twister. They haven't engaged in any ideological position of swapping preferences. The Sex Party, for instance, a Libertarian Party, has put Pauline Hanson ahead of both the Greens and the Labor Party and the Liberal Party.
Exactly. That's the point that Tim Colbatch makes, is that virtually every small right-of-centre party is directing preferences to the One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, ahead of Senator Sinodinos. And as you say, with such a myriad of smaller parties all running down the line until you then get to the Liberal candidate, the Liberal senator, Mr Sinodinos, then the preference flow runs out before it gets to him.
That's certainly the case. And look, it's the general case that this Senate election is an outrageous fiddling of the electoral system. It is an international laughingstock to have the situation where people need magnifying glasses to vote, to try and find the candidates they know amongst the flotsam and jetsam of people who've been able to get on the ballot paper because of the loose criteria to get on the ballot paper in Australia, and because of this ticket voting system, which allows people with no support and who make no efforts to campaign to actually control their preferences in a way which is unknown in any other electoral system in the world. And if we get some of the strange people tossed up at this election, this system will have to be changed. And for all the talk of double dissolutions in the next term of Parliament, a double dissolution is impossible under this electoral system without anyone you've never heard, without somebody you've never heard of getting elected to the Senate. This system has to be changed and it has to be dealt with in the future because it's ridiculous as it works now.
Anthony Green, I'm assuming that you had your Weet-Bix this morning because you're very fired up about this, and I'm also assuming that such analysis and comments is yours and yours alone and not necessarily speaking for the ABC.
No, I've got to say, I have appeared before parliamentary committees several times over the last 10 years pointing this out. I pointed this out before the 1999 New South Wales election when there were 83 groups.
I know, but they're not changing it. You pointed it out, but they're not changing it.
The result of this is, look, it is true, Arthur Sinodinos, depending on the way the votes goes, could be defeated by Pauline Hanson. Family First could defeat Helen Kroger in Victoria on the Liberal Party ticket because of the way this has been done. This has been coming for years and politicians have turned their eyes away from it for years. Well, we'll see what happens on the 7th of September. But the Parliament that's elected, the Senate elected, will be reflecting the internecine deals between people that nobody's ever heard of. It won't be reflecting the will of the public.
Well, I guess we'll leave that for others to interpret. I mean, people might argue that that's exactly the will of the public. If you end up with an entire number of smaller parties.
The supporters for the Sex Party do not support Pauline Hanson ahead of the Greens and the Labor Party. I'm absolutely sure of that, but that's what's going to be delivered.
All right. Well, just returning to this point for a moment, if we can, just before we let you go, because I know you're busy. As you say, Pauline Hanson would have to get 2% in order to even be included in this discussion. At the last election, she won, according to Tim Colbatch, 4.5% of the vote. So just to make the argument, to be fair, he's halved it. He's just given her half, which is 2%, which would get her there.
No.
Is that unreasonable?
She got 4.5 in Queensland.
Yes.
She got 2.5 when she stood in the New South Wales Upper House last time.
Right.
I think two and a bit maybe is a possibility.
Okay.
But truly, she's in an appalling position on the ballot paper.
All right, well, let's see if that makes any difference. As you say, we've got to use magnifying glasses even to see it. Good to cross swords with you again this morning, Anthony. Thanks so much.
Thanks.